which is music. And the first person that will be talking is Marie Cousin from the University of Burgundy. And she'll be presenting a paper, Piano Comping in Ballet Classes, between catharsis and refinement of emotional palette, the generation by the music of an emotional yoga. So, Marie.
Okay, hi everybody, thank you so much. Yes, so just before sharing my video, I apologize for my French accent, really strong, and also from the translation that sometimes is not really good, so sorry. And I'm going to skip the first part because it took 30 minutes, so maybe we are going to begin with the beginning of the, I'm going to speak all the philosophical preamble and go directly to the repertoire of the ballet class and the piano in the dance class and is the relation to the creation of the emotions. So I'm going to share and okay, let's go. First of the repertoire from violin to piano. The music repertoire of dance classes is a result of progressive transformation. The violin was replaced in the 20th century by the piano, but it was the king of the dance and dance classes. Many illustrations of dance classes accompanied by the violin persist, especially in the gas painting. So I have a gray screen. I don't know for you.
It's green.
It's gray?
Yeah, it's gray, yes. It's gray.
Yeah, okay. The technical problem. Let's. The repertoire from violin to piano. The musical repertoire of dance classes is a result of progressive transformation. The violin was replaced in the 20th century by the piano, but it was the king of the dance and dance classes. Many illustrations of dance classes accompanied by the violin persist, especially in the gas painting, where the violinist accompanies the ballet master. The ballet master used a cane to beat time, but it was also used to correct the posture of the dancer. However, during the Renaissance and the Baroque period, the violin was associated with the dances of the people, while the viola d'amore was considered a noble instrument suitable to accompany the dance of the upper classes. With the development of romantic music and the adaptation of the dance suite and extract from opera, operetta, and piano ballet arias, a new repertoire had been formed. This repertoire already associated well-known, fashionable, and popular arias with themes from the specific ballet repertoire. Many arias accompanying this exercise today come from the dance suites, court dance, and quadrille, very popular in France and in Europe in the 18th and 19th century, and then in the 20th century, mazurka, polka, valse, bourrée, tango, habaneras. These dances have found a very important craze with composers like Chopin, valse, mazurka, Delibes, Brahms, among other romantics and modern composers. At the turn of the 20th century, the habanera and tango were the dance fashions in the French capital. Gradually, these different dances will constitute this repertoire, which will be completed by the influence of jazz and modern French music like Debussy and Ravel. We had encountered old scores, such as collection of dances and dance tunes for piano, then more specifically, in the 20th century, scores of music to accompany dance classes. A musical literature has therefore been developed in a specific way. So we can see the master of the violin here, and the master of the dance here. In the Degas paintings, the violin and the violin here. The constitution of the repertoire in the 20th and 20th century. However, today there are a current of schools, but not an homogeneity of the repertoire of ballet classes. During the 20th century, the repertoire has changed. From an extreme academicism and certain austerity, he had moved to something dynamic and creative. There would indeed have been a break between generations of dancers who then became teachers themselves. Some teachers have expressed their choice to break the repertoire with which they learned when young. This repertoire being too repetitive, not very diverse, and associated with non-ideal teaching methods. This structure illustrates the reappropriation of the aesthetics and emotional content of this repertoire. Specificities of the repertoire. The repertoire of the bar or the middle remains exclusively for the solo piano, with the variation are worked on orchestral extracts or reduction for piano. The exclusivity of this instrument today marks the creation of the specific sound identity during dance lessons, as well as the content of much of the accompanying piano repertoire. What are the characteristics of good ballet accompanying music? The choice at first glance is made by the teachers according to criteria of pace and adaptability of the character of the exercise. Indeed, for the dancers, music is at the service of the movement and exercise. It will give accentual and metric support to the exercises and will inspire energy. Unlike the spectator, who will have the impression that the dancer is interpreting music, for the dancer, the movement is in the foreground. The music will be in the stage, the floor on which the dancer would work. The criteria mentioned by the dance teachers interviewed are musicality and expressiveness, which will especially allow young dancers to recognize as accents and tempos, the desire to dance. The music must be beautiful, pleasant, not linear or soporific, well rhythmic, dynamic, lively. Adaptation to the character of certain exercises. For example, adage are slow and sentimental or restrained. Rides are dynamic and joyful. Battery can have a martial character. Other criteria subsequently appeared, linked to the dancer's experience. For example, the fact that music could have been associated with pleasant family and friend memories. This criteria, therefore, remains very subjective, which is why we ask them to give us more explicit keys on the directory they use. In addition, for the pupils of the first year, certain teachers of the dance classes of private dance schools integrate music from films, from movies and cartoons, especially for children, to solicit their motivation. It is therefore the musical dynamics, accent, nuance, tempo, rhythm, which are selected before the melodic or harmonic aspects. Children who exercise faster because they are closer to the ground will therefore not dance to the same music as adults because their movements are often faster. Beginners should be able to account the beat easily, while the advanced can work on piece with more difficult developed musicality. However, some teachers and dancers explain that the emotion felt is more related to the melodic harmonic pattern. As part of the lesson, some teachers change the music every 3 months, every month, every week, every session, depending on the choreographic sequence. Those who will use the same music for 3 months will also, for example, choreograph the same bar, the same sequence of exercises for 3 months. There is therefore a link between the piece of the music and the sequence of exercises that correlates to it. The choice of pieces can also be linked to the teacher's emotional memories and his desire to transmit these emotions to the young dancers. The pianist. Dancers and teachers alike agree that the presence of the pianist completely transforms the experience of the dance class. The presence of a pianist gives the teacher the possibility to change the repertoire on demand or ask him to accentuate, enhance, or bring a particular interpretation to modify aspects related to his inner creativity, his musicality, his emotion, or his affect, depending on the inspiration of the moment or the reactivity of the students. From the point of view of the dancers, the presence of the pianist transforms the experience of the dancer. The energy of the musician, his intention, his emotion will carry the dancer and allow him to surpass itself, to transcend these different exercises. Several dancers contacted attended dance classes accompanied in particular by Laurent Choucroun from the CNSM DP and Paris Opera School of Dance, and testified to the specificity of his incredible pianic performance in terms of expressiveness. The recorded music repertoire specificity. The content of the camping piano for ballet class repertoire, a full repertoire, artistic and training, that mean non-considered as artistic only for rehearsal. First repertoire, artistic. Variation of great ballets. Second repertoire, study or training, really short music pieces. The repertoire of many dance teachers are composed of an assemblage of different short musical pieces composed by specialized pianist composers, then published in CD collections. These musics constitute a specialized, specific repertoire, which is known only to the dancers and only listened to during the dance classes or to the bar at home. There are two processes. The adaptation of short pieces by classical composers like Czerny, Mozart, Bach, Strauss, the creation of a new repertoire of the 20th century. Since the end of the 20th century, there has been the constitution of a specialized repertoire with the production of discs by few pianists who will gain an international aura in the community, notably Laurent Chokroun, Sylvain Durand, Elina Akimova, Ayumi Hirosaki, or Pietro Galli from the National Opera of Paris. There will therefore be a specific dynamic in the composition of the accompanying pianists of the CNSM-DP and the National Paris Opera. Our survey showed that the music used is not the same depending on the age group and the technical level of the students. Several teachers prefer music with simpler melodic and harmonic dimensions and with marked accents for the students of the first years. Composition of the 20th repertoire in general. Ballet excerpts and short pieces, extracts from pieces of chamber music, national dances like tango, great influence of contemporary neoclassical music and jazz, film soundtracks, series, and anime. So the specificity of this repertoire is made by short pieces carrying a strong musical choreographic identity. So there exist two modalities, CD or piano. The piano transforms the experience because you can ask the pianist for the pieces according to them, for the musical inspiration of the moment, for the progress of the exercises. For example, make the pianist last longer on the balance, to accentuate or highlight certain aspects. The power and emotional intention of the piano carries the dancer. If the pianist is inspired, the music will transcend and carry the dancer with a feeling of achievement, of fullness. Great piano comping masters. Laurent Chokroun is the head of chef de chant at the National Opera of Paris. His compositions are used all over the world, transmitted through specific networks. What if I work with sheet music? Not at all, I improvise. I watch the teachers explain the movement he requires, and for my part, I associate notes and flights with them. My motto could be, let's listen to the dance and watch the music. The repertoire of the composer and conductor at the Paris Opera School, Laurent Chokroun, is specifically oriented towards expression of emotions. Each composition is associated with a particular emotion state or state of mind and intention. Saudade, simplement, obstiné, passion, tenderness, so much. So many emotional states that Laurent Chokroun named his composition, on which illustrates the multitude of different states that music will create. Dance is the music of the body, and music is the dance of the mind. Method of musical interpretation of the dance movement in response to the psychological needs of each movement in a codification. Write a score that could retransmit all the parameters that will help dancers to let go through the music without asking questions. Dance and music become inseparable. We don't dance to music, we dance to music. Okay, so let's listen to a few examples of Laurent Chokroun. we just listen to an extract for the exercise of the round of the legs on the ground. So let's listen to another extract for the same exercise called with tenderness or sweetness. Other masters or composer of the National Opera of Paris and other national operas in the world, like Sylvain Durand. And let's listen to the art of Sylvain Durand. This is a really sweet music, and Sylvain Durand is known to have worked with Jean-Michel Jarre and also to introduce a jazz harmony in this composition. We can find others international composers, specifically for ballet, like Marina Sorgan from Canada, and Elina Kimova from the National Opera of Paris, Ayumi Hirozaki from the Tokyo National Opera. And she uses extracts also for Tchaikovsky, Gershwin, Scott Joplin, Prokofiev, Bizet, mixed among her own composition. And the last one, Soren Bebe, which is from Swedish jazz and also composer for the ballet. So let's listen to the Ronde de Jean Bataire. Emotional development in ballet class. This pianistic music will encompass a wide progressive panel of emotions that will be experienced by the followers during the courses of the dance class and will allow an emotional catharsis on the one hand because of the expressions through the feeling and the experience of the choreographed movements, and on the other hand, in the fact that emotion which could not necessarily have been felt in a normal day are brought to be lived in a regular and recurring order. The repetition of the same musical pieces and the emotions associated with them during a term, the most common model of course structures, allows the follower to experience this unfolding on a daily or weekly basis, to become familiar with it and to learn about it. Interpretation classes. There are, in particular, in the dance school of the National Opera of Paris and within the classes of the same ballet, musical expression or interpretation courses which aim to train the dancer specifically to the interpretation of an expression of emotions. These classes are said to be increasingly rare nowadays, especially since some teachers have suggested a transformation in the style that will tend towards a greater inclusion of contemporary dance. Yvette Chouguer's class, a dance teacher, is cited as a benchmark for the performance class. The other times when the interpretation would be specifically worked on would be the work of the variations presented during the international competitions. Music and emotions in the dance class and specificities of the exercises. Mirror neurons conduct the transmission of emotion from teacher to student. Recognize the emotion in the dance structure and reinterpret them. The emotion is linked sometimes with memory of a moment, family, serenity, and this particular emotion is linked to the individual experience. We note the importance of the context in which this music was heard and practiced, the evocation of this emotional memory during the song, emotions linked to collective representation and symbolism, embodied such character, music from such ballets. Emotions appeared in our interviews on several levels, particular in the relationships to memory. The emotion linked to the realization of choreographic sequence or a figure that had been carried by the music. The emotion linked to a specific musical identity, for example, an aria of Don Quixote or the Swan Lake, or another ballet that inspired the vocation of dance when the person was a child. The emotion linked to family, friendly or emotional memories associated with a musical theme, for example, Christmas or Disney music that fascinated children. Certain music in particularly associated with certain exercises and an emotion content is identified with which would correlate with the emotional content, the effect of the exercises. The music would give the character of the movement, but it would be a reciprocal back and forth, an exchange, a mutual illumination. Adage, slow moment in which the dancer will develop delicacy and gentleness between different postures. Lyricism. The emotions associated are melancholy, nostalgic, peaceful, serenity. Plié and round of leg, meditative detachment. The turns or pirouette and the jumps are associated with cheerfulness and bravery. Sorry.
Marie,
Diagonals,
pardon
merry-go-round and coda.
si vous voulez stopper un peu. If you can conclude, sorry about.
Ouais, I know it's too long.
You just run out of time already.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the recording and the problems of the recording. But you understand the end. So there's a conclusion. There is a relation between the moves, the dance moves, and they hold proper emotion, and this emotion must be recognized in the music that accompanies them. And all the work of the pianist is to choose and to compose a good music that will relieve this emotion that constitutes the dance move. And also there is a correlation between the accent in the music and the form of the music and the accent of the feet on the ground. For example, the rond de jambe on the ground, this is like a move of the feet on the ground. And the musical phrases, it's and the accents they follow exactly the pattern of the legs on the ground. So on the conclusion, piano accompanying ballet classes permits the dancers to first in order or maybe 15 different music or 20 music holding each one a different emotion, the ballet dancers learn to reveal and to interpret these different emotions. And the ballet teachers that I interviewed recognize that ballet class is not only a dance class, but also an emotional class. This is to learn dance, and also this is to learn emotions. And after, this is to learn how to reinterpret them. And piano has a piano comping has the perfect role in this transmission of the emotions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Marie.
Okay.
So, if anybody has questions, also in the chat. Well, I have a question. Marie, about the comping, how much of a freedom that the musician that is doing the comping have, or everything is discussed before with the teacher, the ballet teacher will decide all the things, or the musician can follow also what is feeling, what he's feeling about the dancers, everything.
Thank you. This is exactly the problem. There are teachers who have their own repertoire, and they ask the pianist to play it and ask him to play with more energy or to accentuate this part or that part. But also pianists like Laurent Chokroun, they improvise totally in front of the dancers, because some pianists have a really good knowledge of the dance movements, and they know exactly which movement we need which energy. And Laurent Chokroun, he's really famous for improvising his own melodies in front of the dancers. So I think there is a little and a few stream of some few pianists in the world that are composing the 21st century repertoire, which is very different from the whole repertoire. And this new repertoire, a lot of is from improvisation. But of course, for improvise, we need to have structures already in our minds, and etc.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone, or we'll go to the next one? Okay, so the next presentation is with Nathalie Abou Jaoude from Université Antonine de Lebanon. Nathalie, if you want to try out before starting, like you asked me.
I think it's okay.
It's okay? Okay,
Yeah.
remember to sharing the audio, I will say. Okay, so Nathalie, I give you the word.
Thank you. So hello everyone. I'm gonna share my video. You might listen to a music that you can feel extraordinary with quarter tones, so just don't be surprised.
A cognitive differentiation of the emotional colorings of the Levantine modal scales by Lebanese children and early adolescents. The study is part of a global research project on the cognitive and neurological perception of modal monodies developed in 2018 by the Center of Research for Traditional Music at the Antonine University, Lebanon, and supported by the National Council for Scientific Research, directed by Professor Nida Abou. The ancient Hellenistic approaches to the concept of the effect of music on humans took both the medical route of triad correlations with the temperament of the Galen-Hippocratic tradition and Aristotle's psychology route of triad categorization of the theory of the ethos. The theoretical treatises of the Arab and Persian schools, written between the 18th and the 19th century, postulate a generative grammar for music that focuses on modality and its underlying structures and the ethical effect of music athar. These treatises distribute the 12 canonical modes into 3 emotional categories: systole or tension, diastole or relaxation, and ezekia or equilibrium. Alternatively, it appears from the divisions that emotional colorings of the modes are tributary of their scalar structure. It's a type of emotional and symbolic coloring associated with the scalar characterization of melodic statements. The systolic ethos is defined by the constriction of intervals, whereas full inference of the Zelzal norm corresponds to a diastolic ethos, and a moderate constriction in the Zelzal norm corresponds to a azykastic ethos. Based on this observation, in 2020-2021, an experimental study was developed to determine if Lebanese children and early adolescents distinguish between emotional colorings that characterize the structural modality of traditional musical sequences. The psychological experimental study is focused on a narrowed melodic material with a minimization of the meters involved, and it focuses on three modes that are frequently used in the Levantine traditions: Rast, Bayati, and Saba. However, the scales Rast and Saba differ accordingly to the arrangement of the intervals of the basic pentachord. The scale of Rast consists of a major tone or a whole tone, three-quarter tone, and a whole tone. The Bayati scale consists of a three-quarter tone, major second, and major second. The Saba results from a significant reduction of the fourth degree, which causes an extreme tightening of the tetrachordal interval, and the scale consists of a three-quarter tone, a minor second, and an augmented second. The main research question, therefore, seeks to answer whether children and early adolescents experience an increase in tension, and this tension can be from Rast to Bayati and from Bayati to Saba, by distinguishing the difference in emotional coloring in the traditional monodic modal musical sequences. Tradition and scale analysis assume that Rast is more relaxing than Bayati, and Bayati is more relaxing than Saba. The experimental protocol and results. The experimental study was carried out on a sample of 300 children and early adolescents selected in a school environment. 141 girls and 159 boys. They were randomly selected with 50 subjects for each age. In terms of musical education, they were not exposed to Levantine traditional music at schools. Even so, 23.7% of them practiced an Occidental music instrument, such like piano, guitar, or violin, or an Oriental percussion instrument. We will show the results below of the cognitive differentiation of the scalar semantics underlying the Levantine modal monodies centered on the three modes, Rast, Bayati, and Saba. The results of the first three tests were collected in a table of frequencies and percentages, analyzing one correct answer to each subtest. Children and early adolescents should distinguish if a musical excerpt belongs to a given mode in which the intervals of the scale have changed. The objective remains to verify the perceptual capabilities that evolve with age while considering modal changes. In test number 1, children and adolescents listened to an introductory sequence in Rast mode several times. As you see on the staff, the B flat and the E flat are diminished by quarter tone. This is what we call the half E flat and the half B flat. After they listen to the introductory sequence, they listen to two extracts, 1 and 2, in a sequence, and select which of the two belongs to the Rast mode. In other words, the extract that has not undergone a chord change. The two extracts have the same rhythmic melodic pattern, the same timbre, and the same register, except for a change in interval scale structure. So extract 1 is an extract that belongs to Rast mode, and extract number 2 is a musical sequence that does not belong to the Rast mode. At the second time, they listen to the introductory sequence one more time, and they listen successively to two extracts, 3 and 4, and they have to choose among the two which belong to the rust mode. So extract number 3 belongs to rust, and extract number 4 doesn't belong to the rust mode. According to the data, all of them have identified the belonging to the mode rust with a percentage of 64.7 and 77. And according to the chi-square independence test in SPSS, the observed distribution of percentages was highly significant in both comparisons between extract 1 and 2, with a p-value less than 0.001, and between extract 3 and 4 with a p-value less than 0.001. Test number 2 and 3 were treated in the same manner. They listened to an introductory sequence in Bayati mode, then chose between two musical extracts, one of which belongs to the Bayati mode or to the Saba mode. Let's listen now to the introductory sequence in Bayati mode. We listen now to the two extracts. The first one belongs to Bayati mode and the second does not. After listening to the extract 1 and 2 in Bayati mode and then 3 and 4, we go to the test number 3, where they listen to an introductory sequence in Saba mode, and then they choose between the 4 extracts which one belongs to the mode or not. And as you see on the staff here with the Saba mode, we're using the B flat diminished by quarter tone, the E flat diminished by quarter tone, and the G flat, which is augmented or a little bit higher than the usual. Let's listen to the introductory sequence. Now we listen to the two extracts, the one that belongs and the second one that doesn't. According to the data, all of the children and early adolescents have identified the belonging to the mode Bayati and the mode Saba. with high significance, except the significance between the two extracts 3 and 4 and the Saba mode. There was no significance. And test number 4, children and early adolescents must identify the modal emotional coloring, this time of musical excerpts, compared from the happiest to the saddest. And to limit the variables, a brief simple instrument melody from a dulab or a traditional prelude is chosen to be played in all 3 modes, while keeping the rhythmic melodic pattern, timbre and register completely fixed and changing the modal scale. They have to listen to 2 successive musical excerpts from 2 different modes and must assign a happy or sad face to each excerpt. In other terms, they must assign an emotional coloring to each mode that is more or less tense, systolic, or relaxed, diastolic. Let's listen to the first 2 extracts, the first one in Bayati and the second one in Saba. After listening to the 2 extracts, they have to attribute a smiley face or a sad face to one of the extracts. Usually, they have to attribute the smiley face for the Bayati and the sad face to the Saba. And here, in comparison between Saba and Rust. Here, the third time, they have to see the difference between the Rust and the Bayati. As you see, in the Rust, we have the F half sharp, and in the Bayati, we have the F natural. And between Rust and Bayati, we have the E natural for the Rust and the E half flat for the Bayati. Let's listen to the 2 extracts. According to the data analysis, children and adolescents have a happiest emotional coloration toward the 2 modes Bayati and Rust when compared to the Saba mode. Concerning the comparison of the 2 modes Bayati and Rust, the identification appears difficult. 48.3% assigned a sad face to the Rust mode, and 51.7% assigned a happy emotion to the Bayati. The chi-square independence test shows that the observed distribution of the percentages was significant between the results of the emotional colorings between the Bayati and the Saba and between the Rust and the Saba. As per the comparison between Rust and Bayati, it was not significant. In conclusion, the findings show that children and early adolescents perceive the underlying scalar semantic of traditional Levantine modal monodies, and they differentiate the traditional monodic modal sequences depending on the different emotional colorings, more or less tense, systolic, or relaxed diastolic. The excessive contraction of the intervals of the Saba mode leads to an excess of perceptual emotional tension. But the differentiation between the scales of the 2 modes, Rust and Bayati, was not statically proven. Furthermore, determining why the subjects were unable to differentiate the emotional colorings of the 2 modes, Rust and Bayati, requires additional research into the musical training used in Lebanese schools, which limits the practice of traditional Levantine music. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nathalie. We have questions. Nathalie,
Yes.
What is the span of age, the people that participated in the research?
7-12 years.
7, 12.
And now we're having study with the adolescents from 12 to 16 years, but we are still analyzing the results.
Okay, and sorry about my ignorance on the subject, but the results are like, how can I say, agreeing, sorry, with the common knowledge of this Macant, I don't know.
Yes, yes. Though the children don't have culture, or they don't listen to our culture music, they listen to English music or French music. We live in multicultural country, and this is the reason why we are doing these studies, to prove that they can listen to the modes, that we can teach our traditional music and not leave it to death.
So these kids and teenagers are from different backgrounds, I imagine.
Yes.
Because it was like 500, no?
300.
300, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so, sorry, I'm just, oh, okay, Dan, come on.
Thanks, I already raised my virtual hand.
Yes. When you raised it, I was looking to the other features. It wasn't.
I don't know. Well, thank you very much for the very inspiring and interesting talk. Teaching us a lot about the modes. Actually, teaching me a lot about the modes. I have a question referring to the emotional, the attribution of emotional value. As you show that there were these results, they kind of the kids judged the emotional balance.
Yeah.
And what we heard in the morning by Emmanuel Bigot, which he actually didn't really put it like this, but that's what I heard, is that we have kind of a distribution of high tone density and high impetus, so much movement in the music, and then we have this kind of arousal and high tempo. And if the whole things are low, then we have low arousal. And if there is more dissonance or something, then we have this negative balance. And if it's nicely consonant, there's this positive balance. So what he called happy and sad and calm and whatever. So can you fit the judgments of your population, of your study, into that scheme of what Emmanuel would call this universals, the emotional universals in music? Can you kind of make a connection?
Actually, when we were asking students to choose a happy or a sad phase, we wanted to mention the negative and the positive balance in music, but we couldn't ask them about the balance, the emotional balance. So we attributed the smiley face and the sad face. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, but could you observe, for example, if the happy face was attributed, maybe, well, we heard some example, but I couldn't really get it. So maybe to quicker themes, or which were played with more event density, like with a, and the sad things, the unhappy face, more to maybe slower things, or kind of anything related to musical structure in that sense. Could you
actually, we didn't, as I said, we narrowed the variables so they don't get lost with the rhythmic patterns. So we use the same rhythmic patterns and the same instrument, the same timbre jump. So they won't get lost by choosing, by attributing the emotions. So, but some of them, they give a happy to a somewhat sad mode. That's what we arrived to show at the end. They attributed a sad face to the rust, which is supposed to be happier than the other one. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Nathalie.
Thank you.
So now we'll go to the last presentation in the session, and which will be Susana Rodríguez from UNED, Universidad Nacional de Educación a Distance. That will be presenting That's Me and That's Okay, Self-Understanding Through Musical Memory. Okay, Susana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for organizing this nice encounter. I'm going to apologize in advance for my accent, and I hope everyone understands me enough. I'm going to share the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to start explaining why I'm doing this project. Some years ago, I had some personal experiences that made me reflect on what some people call the power of music. I was in a long depression for some years when I used to listen to a lot of music. And years passed, I went to therapy, I did many changes in my life, and I finally started feeling better until I was recovered. In this new phase of my life, from time to time, I stumbled across music I had listened to repeatedly during my depression. And although I already knew that music could easily evoke feelings and memories, it wasn't really until these experiences that I learned how strong that power could be. Sometimes it was so much that, I felt so bad that I would refuse to listen to a certain song or a certain artist. And however, sometimes I will put on some of these songs on purpose, because even if they brought back bad memories, listening to them as someone who had recovered from that period of my life, it made me reflect on it, and in this case, realizing that I was a different person now, that I had come very far. So it was helpful. It was helpful on my bad days, and it was reassuring on my good days. So this experience was the starting point of my interest in musical memory and personal narratives. I wanted to know if other people had a similar experience towards their music. I wanted to know how specific pieces of music affected people through musical memories. And I also wanted to know what kind of narratives people will create about themselves, provoked by their music. And basically, I wanted to know how music helped people understand themselves and inspire them to do what they needed to do in order to feel better. So this was the topic of my end of master's paper that I did last year and finished this winter. So I started talking to people about this subject, about my experience, and I interviewed those I thought understood what I was talking about. Not everyone I talked with felt identified with this view on music, at least the way I had explained it. So we made 6 in-depth interviews in which I asked them to bring a list of more or less 20 songs or pieces of music they felt were the most personally relevant in their lives so far. So this meant that these songs represented an important period of their lives, that they made them remember an important person, that they had a big emotional reaction, or that they felt identified to them in any other way. So then the interview will consist on them telling me about each song, why they had chosen it, and what did it mean to them, how they listened to it, or how they used it, or how they felt when they listened to it. This was my very first time studying music, not as a music student, but as a social and cultural anthropology student. So I needed a theory that allowed me to think of music as a cultural resource whose meaning, which meaning was both collective and individual, always changing. I needed to address how emotions played an important role in its effect on people. And I needed to consider music as a social action and as a resource to build bonds between people. So in this work, I studied music as a symbol. And I based my work on a couple of theories. Everything started with when I read about Gibbon's theory about the project of the self. According to this theory, modernity gives individuals so many ways to live a life to choose from that we tend to employ quite a lot of time reflecting of what kind of life we want to live, who we want to be, what defines us as individuals, and what makes us feel like ourselves. And then Tia Denora started from this theory too, and add that music was one of the resources that people used to construct themselves as social agents. She considers music as a technology of the self that helps people learn social rules, ways of being, and ways of bonding to other people. And emotion is what makes this possible, based on what kind of experiences we are reminded of when we listen to it. With time, people learn which music triggers which emotions in them, and so we learn how to manage our mood through music. Managing our mood is especially important in modern societies, according to this author, because we constantly have to switch between different social contexts that maybe we are not in the mood to do. So music helps us get in the mood. I also studied memory based on Figure's definition of autobiographical memory. It is a uniquely human form of memory that moves beyond recall of experiences, events, to integrate perspective, interpretation, and evolution across self, other, and time to create a personal history. So this means that what makes autobiographical memory interesting is not that it gives us the exact facts of someone's life, but what makes it interesting is that it is a story created by its own main character. Like people talk about their lives as if their life was a story, defined causes and consequences in each life event. We think of ourselves as the sum of experiences of our past, and we think of ourselves as the creators of our future selves. And this is, according to him and other authors, this is one of the most effective ways of reaching self-understanding. And lastly, I use self-understanding as an alternative to the term identity, following the advice offered by Brubaker and Cooper. While I started this investigation thinking of music and identity, when I read this theory, I agreed that I was, in fact, more interested in a processual perspective. And also I found it more helpful to think that what people wanted from music was to feel understood and not to find some kind of final and fixed identity. On the contrary, what most interested me was to learn how music can inspire people to change and become a closer version to who they want to be. In fact, according to Simon Firth, that I forgot to put the reference here, sorry, identity is not what we are, it's more like what we want to be. So it's always projected into the future. So now I want to show you some ethnographic material from the interviews. I didn't put it in the presentation, but the 6 people I interviewed, they range from ages 27 to 44. And they were 5 women and 1 man. And this wasn't intentional, but I also didn't mind. It wasn't one criteria I was thinking about. And they are all professional musicians, although the definition of professional musician is a bit complicated. So they were really nice to me and open to tell me about themselves. So I found out a couple of things I want to show you. For example, music can make us find out how we feel about certain aspects of our lives. One of my participants, Paula, these are all fake names, but Paula found out that one of the songs on their list affected her more than she had expected. The song is My Favorite Things from the movie The Sound of Music. And this song used to be one of the songs she sang in a band she was in that she ended up leaving because of problems with the other band members. She remembers this period of her life as very distressing. And during the interview, she decided to listen to this song again, and she found out that her emotional response was even worse than she expected, meaning that the episode still affects her more than she thought. However, in general, I observed that for the most part, people were very aware of what their music did to them in terms of musical memory and emotion, and that they could, like Denora had said, regulate their mood through listening to one song or another. Music can also, for example, help someone vent. The song Golpe Maestro de Vetusta Morla makes Paula remember a period of her life where she felt hurt towards other people. I include now a quote she made. She says, "I thought the world was against me, that some people that I appreciated had failed me or attacked me without a reason." So she told me that when she listened to this song, Golpe Maestro, it helped her feel that emotion with more intensity. So she used it to vent the emotion. So venting in this case has the function of getting over the feeling of anger towards the world, towards people, and it helps her reconcile with it. So I was very curious, like, how does this work? How does music help us get over a feeling? So when we self-regulate our emotions with music, that usually doesn't mean putting on a happy song to help us cheer up. It can get more complex. It is very typical, for example, to listen to sad music when we are sad to feel even sadder. Somehow this can feel comforting. This is because what we look for when we self-regulate with music is empathy and understanding. When we are feeling a certain way, we can find comfort in feeling like our surroundings respond to this mood, that somehow we are being listened to. We seek for understanding and as if music was like a shoulder of a friend who listens and understands. So, so the thing is that once we feel like our mood and our music are synchronized, music can help us get over that that mood. The reason is that every emotion is transitory and it follows the shape of a curve that starts down, gradually goes up in intensity, and then it goes down again until it gradually fades away. So music, songs usually follow this same pattern. We write music like we write the stories, sorry, with an introduction, a build-up, a climax, and an ending. So listening to music that corresponds to our mood can make us follow the same curve, feeling how the emotion we are feeling gets stronger and stronger until it passes and we had our moment and we are ready to move on to the next thing. So this is part of the theory of Tia Tenor. So it can also happen that we seek this peak of emotion, not for it to pass and move on to the next thing, but to act on it. When an emotion is useful to achieving something. And I wanted to show you another example, which is another typical situation. So it is also common, for example, to use music to get ready for social events, like Nuria with the song I Could Be the One by Dua Lipa. In this quote I put here, I find most interesting that Nuria feels like the real Nuria is the one that feels better, the one that feels okay, the one that dances in front of the mirror, and the one who is happy to go out with her friends. She expresses that she wants to be, she expresses what she wants to be. She wants to be in the mood to socialize and participate in society and keep building bonds with other people. And I think this is especially significant in her case because she's talking about a breakup, and a breakup means the loss of a social bond. So I think it's significant that she seeks to help herself to not isolate and to keep building social bonds. I think music can also help us to gather new ideas and beliefs we feel useful in our lives. And I want to share two examples of this kind of identification. In both cases, it is lyrics that express in words an idea that feels good to them in this moment. I would like to also in the future to study what is the different, if there are any differences between music with lyrics and music without lyrics, because I didn't put any rules. When I asked for a list of 20 songs, I didn't put any rules that said it had to be a specific gender of music or a specific format, but every single one of them chose 20 songs, and no one brought an instrumental piece of music, and I think that's significant. But I don't know why. In this case, the lyrics are important, but in other cases they didn't say anything about the lyrics. So in this case, this quote is from Javi. So Javi, most of the songs in his list were associated to his own process of recovering from a depression that was also very long in time. There is one song that he says is the one song that he will pick as the one that he identifies to the most, the one that he will pick if he had to describe how he felt about his entire life right now as representative. The song is called Mercury from Sleeping at Last. In general, the lyrics describe the feeling of isolation and restlessness, but from a constructive perspective, from the perspective of someone who is starting to feel better. Javi told me that these lyrics help him feel the inherent value of his life, despite all the suffering. So in his case, this song works as a reminder of the process he is in. It's a projection of who he wants to be, starting from the acceptance of where he is now or where he was. The second case I wanted to show that has to do with gathering ideas from music is also about acceptance. In this case, the acceptance of one's sexuality in a context where this person felt, Maria felt rejected in her social world, especially by her family. So she told me about a song called Todos me miran de Gloria Trevi. And she told me it is a song that reminds her of when she started realizing that she was not heterosexual and how scared she was about telling her family, because she didn't have a good relationship with her family at all. So she, on top of that, this felt like a real problem. And she told me that finding this song by Gloria Trevi helped her realize that there was nothing bad about it, really, and it inspired her to accept herself. There is a second song she told me about called Por Amor al Arte de Iván Guevara. And she told me about this song that it makes her want to help other people who are also still struggling with their identities, those who, thanks to our own self-understanding, we can help to feel better about themselves. So again, music here inspires people to participate to create social bonds after having had feelings of loneliness and isolation. Over and over again, subjects describe feeling better as participating in their life with others and sharing their knowledge with others. So I found out during the interviews that many of them felt identified with the metaphor of a mirror, the metaphor of music as a mirror they felt reflected in. While this is a powerful metaphor, I think, and it is clearly very popular from an emic perspective, I found it even more useful to think of music as a dialogue. It expresses a more bi-directional relationship between the listener and the music. Because when we, this is what I thought about after reflecting on the interviews, when we listen to music, we are projecting on it information about our lives, how we feel and how we want to feel. Meanwhile, the music is communicating to us through its harmonic and rhythm resources that we understand thanks to our own music knowledge, but that we interpret in one way or another, depending on what we are looking for, what we want the music to tell us. This way, it can look like music is talking to us and answering our questions, like Javi told me about. He told me that sometimes the lyrics of a song felt so relevant, especially relevant to him, that he felt like the singer was especially singing to him. So this dialogue metaphor, I think it gives room to the feeling of feeling understood and listening to. It explains why music has the function of social support in moments of social isolation. And like at the start, as a symbol, music's function is to help build social bonds between people through an emotional reaction to their shared meanings. So I think it's useful to talk of music as communication, to use a communication metaphor, and feeling like we are part of this network of meaning, creating meaning and understanding each other. It helps make us want to take part of it again. Like I said, in this case, health, in this case, feeling better is recovering or not renouncing to social bonds and making more social bonds. And that's everything I have prepared for today. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Susana. Maybe, okay, Bernd. There is a hand there.
No, this is applause.
Okay. You know, you can see that I'm not really good with this Zoom thing. Okay, Filippo.
Yes. Thank you very much, Susana. I really enjoyed. I think you have really many interesting things in your research, which for sure are in some way transcultural. I'm sure about that. I mean, the link of music, emotions, and autobiographical memory is very common. And the difference is that any place in the world, different people use this link in different manners. Okay, but for sure there is so that's why it's important what you're talking about. And I don't really have a question, but it's more a comment, just to tell you about my research in Romania with the gypsy or Roma people. And so this link between autobiographic memory, music, and emotion is so strong that people say that one specific music actually is one person. And here it's important to stress this fact that the music is like if it was a sonic image of somebody, right? And so this is also an invitation to go a little bit beyond the idea of music as a symbol. I mean, there are many different ways to think about this, and one of these ways is to think music as a sonic being or sonic agent. And I think that also Bernd knows very well this theoretical let's say work that different researchers are doing on the idea that in some cases the association among a sound or a complex of sounds and a person or another kind of entity, invisible entity, is so strong that those sounds are really not representing that being and that person, but it is that person actually in its sounding version, let's say. So this is the second idea, is that when you think on the strong link between autobiographical memory and the person and identity, this helps also to use other theoretical concepts to think about emotions. And for instance, when you talk about mirror, music as a mirror, or when you talk about music offers a sense of understanding to somebody which is sad, for instance. In this case, I would talk about empathy. This is a very important notion that you can use in your research, because when you feel that you are in front of somebody that understands you, or that you can understand, you are activating empathy, and you are empathizing with that being, right? And so this makes you feel better. And so for sure, when you feel that you are in front of a, let's say, sad sonic being, sad sonic image, you can empathize, you can open up to empathy. And so this is what maybe gives you some positive reward in your experience. So this is just some comments to say that this topic of emotion and autobiographical identity is really central for me. It's one of the most cultural possibilities, transcultural subject of transcultural comparison that we can discuss. And the difference is what type of theoretical tools you use to describe this. And so just this is suggestion maybe to refer to these ideas, this literature on sonic agents, sonic beings, and on empathy toward the musical being. Okay, so just to say that I really enjoyed your way of presenting things. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Livia also had a question.
Yes, thank you, Susana, for your presentation. And first, what I was going to say is in the same line that Filippo has just expressed. So in the beginning, your starting point, you are talking about music as a symbol, so from the theoretical framework of symbolic anthropology, but then your conclusions are in the line of music as an agent. So you are talking about people seek empathy, understanding. You talk about a dialogue with music, a bidirectional exchange. So we are talking about two agents communicating. And so I was thinking that maybe it would be interesting to think about Latour's network actor theory to conceptualize this idea of music as an agent, or Kokelman, who has a richer theoretical framework for thinking on agency in a more elaborated way. So if you want to follow this line, I think that also Filippo's recommendations, but these two authors will be very helpful. And also another comment, you were talking about musical memory and emotion. And in some examples, at least one that I remember, you said you exposed how music can hurt. So not only heal, but there was some of your participants who felt pain when listening to music. And it made me remember the point that Alex made this morning about how music, we should not only look at it as a healing, as a means for healing, but also how it can hurt or how it can be, there are other, let's say, more negative aspects in it. And maybe we can bring this to the open discussion this afternoon. And just a final question, would you say that your participants are using music as a means for self-therapy or self-healing or something like this? Just to see a different angle of music and healing?
I don't know if I can say yes, because there's one problem with my, I don't know if it's a problem, that I mean that I don't know if prior to talking about this topic with me, they had felt these same ideas. Like, I don't know if if this narrative of that music helps them, and I don't know if they already thought that way about music, or if they started feeling this way after talking with me. And I don't know if music as healing, I guess maybe I will have to ask them what they felt healing means for them. For example, in the example of Javi, the one that said that he used a specific lyric to remind himself of the value of his own life. I think that can be called healing, but in other cases, for example, I don't know if it will be so clear, and I will worry that I am saying they use music in a certain way. That is something that I am thinking, but I don't know. I'm not sure. Sorry. But yes, I will want to know how they feel about it. I know how they feel about their music, but I don't know how they feel if that counts as healing. I wouldn't know to say for sure if in my own experiences it counts as healing. It counts as a help, but I don't know, maybe.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. May I suggest you mentioned that you read Tia Denora, who I already recommended in the morning, who's a very good writer on these topics. And she has this book called Music in Everyday Life, and a newer one which is called Music Asylums, which is more about music therapy and more specifically about music and illness and well-being and so on. But the music and everyday life is something which is, I think, what you're talking about. And what you mentioned right now is kind of how do people use music? Yeah, I think what we all do all the time when we listen to self-administered, self-chosen music, that's what is called mood regulation. So if I go downstairs and I have my music and hi-fi thing, and I take a disc or whatever, or connect my cell phone or whatever, when I choose something to listen to, then I do not consciously say, okay, now I'm feeling sad, and that's why I choose this and that song, but I'm choosing one. I'm choosing a certain kind of music, and this has to do, of course, with my mood. And so we are doing this all the time. And there's also literature on that. So if you would like to review that, there's a colleague called Suvi Sarikallio from Finland who has been writing on that. Very, very good things, and also kind of providing a framework what mood regulation is and how mood regulation is used by people when listening to music, and to this kind of self-administered music without the approach of saying, okay, I'm not now using this for healing or for well-being. It's just for choosing, for mood regulation. So you can just get this, write your name in the chat. You will find something.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.